On May 21st, 2008, in Moscow, the UEFA Champions League final went all the way to a penalty shootout. Manchester United versus Chelsea, two English teams, a night that felt heavy with pressure. Cristiano Ronaldo was 23 years old and he had already scored earlier in the match, but then his penalty in the shootout was saved. You can almost feel that moment because it is so specific and so human. One kick, 1 second, and suddenly the camera finds your face while millions of people watch you process disappointment in real time. And then, a few minutes later, Manchester United still won the Champions League because Chelsea slipped and John Terry missed, and Edwin van der Sar saved the last penalty. So Ronaldo ended that night as a champion, but also as a young man who learned that even your best season can still include a painful mistake. I love this moment because it explains so much about him. Not perfect, not protected, just unbelievably ambitious and willing to stand in the spotlight anyway. And if you are learning English and you sometimes feel nervous speaking, I want you to remember this feeling. Confidence is not the absence of mistakes. Confidence is staying in the game. If you like learning English through real-life stories like this, subscribe and like the episode, and tell me in the comments what part of speaking English feels hardest for you right now, like pronunciation, confidence, or finding the right words, because I really want to help you feel natural. Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro was born on February 5, 1985, in Funchal, on the island of Madeira, Portugal. Madeira is beautiful, but it is also far from the big stadiums and big money of European football. When people say he came from humble beginnings, it is not just a dramatic line. He grew up in a working-class family, and from a young age, he was completely obsessed with football. And when I say obsessed, I mean the kind of focus that changes your whole personality. As a kid, he played for a local club called Andorinha, and later for Nacional, still on Madeira. Even early on, he was known for speed, for dribbling, for that intense desire to win that can honestly be difficult for people around you. But that intensity is also a sign of something else, something many successful people have. It is that feeling of, I cannot ignore this dream. In everyday English, we sometimes say someone is driven. Driven means they feel pushed forward from the inside, like they almost cannot stop themselves from chasing the goal. When he was still a teenager, he moved to the Portuguese mainland to join Sporting CP in Lisbon. Imagine that for a second. You are young, you leave your island, you leave your family, and you walk into a bigger world where everyone is talented. For many people, that is where confidence breaks. But for him, it became fuel. At Sporting, he developed in their academy and made his first team debut in 2002, still only 17. And then came one of those signature moments that fans always remember, because it feels like the exact second a life changes. On August 6, 2003, Sporting played a friendly match against Manchester United to open Sporting's new stadium, Estadio José Alvalade, in Lisbon. Manchester United were one of the biggest clubs in the world, coached by Sir Alex Ferguson, and they were not expecting to meet a teenager who would cause so much trouble. Ronaldo played so well that multiple United players reportedly told Ferguson they needed to sign him. That is what it means to make an impression. In natural English, when someone says he turned heads, it means people noticed him immediately because he was doing something special. Later in 2003, Manchester United signed him. The fee is widely reported as $12.24 million, and that was a big number for a teenager at the time. He arrived in England and took the number 7 shirt, which is not just any number at Manchester United. It had been worn by legends like George Best, Eric Cantona, and David Beckham. Wearing number 7 is like wearing history. And he was still a teenager, trying to find his place in a new country, a new language environment, a new style of football. This is where I want you to notice something important about language and confidence. When you move into a new environment, you can feel like you do not belong yet. You might feel quiet. You might feel watched. But growth often requires that uncomfortable stage where you are learning in public. Ronaldo's early years in England were not just magic highlights. He had skills, yes, but he also had moments where people criticized him, where they said he was too flashy, where they said he needed to be more effective. And this is a great everyday expression, because in English, if someone says you need to cut out the unnecessary stuff, it means stop doing things that look nice, but do not truly help. Over time, he did exactly that. He kept the creativity, but he became more direct, more efficient, more dangerous. By the 2006 to 2007 season, he was becoming a superstar in the Premier League. And then the 2007 to 2008 season was the one that truly announced him to the world as the main character, not just a talented winger. In that season, he scored 42 goals in all competitions for Manchester United. 42. For a wide player, that number felt unreal. Manchester United won the Premier League, and then they reached that Champions League final in Moscow in May 2008, the night we talked about in the beginning. And even with the missed penalty, he ended that season as a European champion. A few months later, he won the Ballon d'Or for 2008, the award that recognizes the best player in the world. That year matters because it confirms something. He was no longer only a promise. He was proof. Then comes another signature moment that fans can name instantly, because it reshaped football history and also reshaped his entire life. In 2009, he transferred from Manchester United to Real Madrid. The reported fee was $94 million, and at the time, it was a world record. Just pause on that. When people say record-breaking, it can sound like a random phrase, but this was literally a record. And he arrived in Madrid carrying an enormous weight of expectation. Real Madrid is not a calm place. It is glamorous, yes, but it is also intense, and the fans demand greatness. When he was presented at the Santiago Bernabeu in 2009, the crowd was massive. It is one of those football images that feels more like a concert than a sports event. And this is the kind of pressure that can either crush you or sharpen you. In English, we say he had big shoes to fill. That means the expectations are huge because the history is huge. And instead of shrinking, he expanded. At Real Madrid, his numbers became almost hard to believe. Season after season, he scored and scored and scored. He built iconic partnerships and rivalries, including the famous era where he and Lionel Messi pushed each other to impossible levels. And because this is an English learning podcast, I want you to hear how native speakers talk about that time. We often say they raised the bar. Raised the bar means they made the standard higher for everyone, like they changed what people thought was normal. And that is exactly what happened. Ronaldo's scoring was not just impressive, it changed the definition of elite. One of the biggest chapters in his Madrid story is the UEFA Champions League, because this is the competition that defines European greatness. Real Madrid won the Champions League in 2014, 2016, 2017, and 2018, and Ronaldo was central to that era. The 2013 to 2014 season ended with Real Madrid winning La Decima, their 10th European Cup, in the final in Lisbon, at Estadio da Luz on May 24, 2014, against Atletico Madrid. For Portuguese fans, winning a Champions League final in Lisbon was already emotional. And for Ronaldo, it was another major milestone in the city where he had once arrived as a teenager to join Sporting. These full-circle moments are powerful because they remind you that success is often a long story, not a quick one. It is years of repetition, training, recovery, focus, and showing up even when you do not feel perfect. During his Madrid years, he won more Ballon d'Or awards, specifically in 2013, 2014, 2016, and 2017, adding to his 2008 win. 5 Ballon d'Or awards is not just a nice number. It places you in a tiny group of the most decorated players in football history. But what I find even more interesting is how he handled his own identity during that time. Because at Real Madrid, he was not only a player, he became a global brand, a symbol, a person who could not really walk through the world normally anymore. And when you cannot live normally, you have to create a kind of mental routine to stay stable. For language learners, this is similar in a small way to what happens when you start speaking more. At first, you feel exposed. You feel like people notice every mistake. But over time, you create habits that protect your confidence, like practicing certain phrases, or slowing down your speech, or learning how to recover when you forget a word. Recovery is a life skill, not just a sports skill. Now, I want to take you to a moment that is not about club football, but about national identity, and honestly, about emotion. Portugal had an incredibly talented generation, but for many years they could not win a major international trophy. Cristiano Ronaldo carried the hopes of a small country that loves football with its whole heart. And then, in 2016, at UEFA Euro 2016 in France, Portugal reached the final. The final was on July 10, 2016, at the Stade de France in Saint-Denis, near Paris, against France, the host nation. The pressure was enormous, and then something happened that still feels shocking when you remember it. Ronaldo got injured during the match and had to leave the field early. For a superstar, for a captain, for the face of the team, that is a nightmare scenario. It is the exact moment where you feel powerless. Portugal still found a way. The match went to extra time, and Portugal won 1-0 with a goal by Eder. Portugal became European champions. Even if Ronaldo could not finish the match on the field, the win changed the entire story of Portuguese football. It was the country's first major international trophy. And this moment is important for English learners because it shows another expression we use all the time. We say the team pulled it off. Pulled it off means they succeeded even though it was difficult and many people doubted them. Portugal pulled it off in the hardest environment against the home team, in France, in a final. And for Ronaldo, it meant that one of the biggest missing pieces in his career, winning with Portugal, was finally real. After so many years at Real Madrid, another major turning point arrived in 2018. Ronaldo transferred to Juventus in Italy. The reported fee was around $100 million. It was a shocking move in its own way, because people often imagine superstars staying in one legendary club forever. But he chose a new league, a new culture, a new challenge. Juventus is based in Turin, and Serie A has a different style than Spain or England. He won Serie A titles with Juventus, and he continued scoring, continuing to prove that his body, his discipline, and his mindset were not temporary. This is where people talk about his training habits, his diet, his recovery, his focus on details. And I want to be careful here, because it is easy to turn this into a myth. Like he is not human. He is human. He gets tired, he has doubts, he has pressure. But the difference is that he has learned to treat discipline like a lifestyle, not like a mood. In simple English, mood is how you feel today. Lifestyle is what you do consistently, even when you do not feel like it. Another historic milestone in his story came through international football. In 2021, Ronaldo became the top scorer in men's international football, surpassing the previous record held by Ali Daei of Iran. This is one of those numbers that tells you about longevity. You cannot reach a record like that with only 2 amazing seasons. You need years and years of showing up, traveling, playing qualifiers, playing tournaments, carrying pressure, and still finishing chances. And the thing I love about this record is that it is not only about talent, it is about persistence. In everyday English, we say, he kept at it. Kept at it means he continued, he did not quit, he did not let time slowly push him out of the story. In 2021, he made another move that felt like a movie scene. He returned to Manchester United. The return of a superstar to the club where he became famous is the kind of storyline fans dream about. And he had a huge moment soon after, when he scored on his second debut back at Old Trafford in a Premier League match against Newcastle United on September 11th, 2021. Old Trafford is a stadium full of memory for him, and scoring there again felt like time folding in on itself. And yet, real life is always more complicated than the perfect highlight reel. That second period at Manchester United included big moments, but also conflict, instability, and eventually an ending that was not smooth. This part of his story is important because it shows something many people experience in their own careers, even outside sports. Sometimes you return to a place you loved, hoping it will feel the same, and it does not. And that does not mean you failed. It just means life changed. People changed. You changed. In late 2022, his time at Manchester United ended, and then in 2023, he joined Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia. That move marked a new chapter, not just for him, but for global football, because it was part of a larger trend of famous players moving to the Saudi Pro League. For Ronaldo, personally, it meant starting again in a new country, a new league, a new daily rhythm. And I always think about how much courage it takes to restart when you are already legendary. Some people only feel brave when they are anonymous because they feel free to fail quietly. But when you are famous, every change becomes public. In English, we say you are under a microscope. Under a microscope means people examine every small detail of what you do. And even with that kind of attention, he still chose change. Now, I want to slow down and talk about what actually makes him such a powerful figure to learn English with. Not because we want to copy his life, but because his life gives us real vocabulary for ambition, pressure, criticism, growth, discipline, and reinvention. When you listen to his story, you hear words like debut, transfer, record, final, comeback, captain, injury, and legacy. These are not just sports words. They are life words. For example, comeback is a word we use in normal life when someone returns after a hard time. You can have a comeback after a bad exam, after losing confidence, after moving to a new city, after a breakup, after anything. And Ronaldo's career is full of comebacks. Not always dramatic, but consistent. A bad moment, then a response. A missed penalty in 2008, then a Ballon d'Or later that year. A painful injury in the Euro 2016 final, then a trophy for his country. A new league, a new adaptation, more goals. Another word that fits his story is relentless. Relentless means you do not stop, you do not give up, you keep pushing. Sometimes people say it as a compliment, and sometimes as a criticism, because relentless can feel intense. But in his case, that relentlessness is a big reason he stayed at the top across different leagues and different eras. And I think language learning also needs a gentle kind of relentlessness. Not harsh, not stressful. Gentle relentlessness means you keep coming back to English, even in small ways, even when you are tired. You listen again. You repeat a phrase. You try again tomorrow. That is how fluency grows. And we cannot talk about Ronaldo without acknowledging the huge debate that followed him for years, the constant comparison with Messi, the arguments about who is the greatest. This debate became part of football culture in the 2010s especially, and it often made people forget how rare it is to witness two players pushing each other to historic levels at the same time. Rivalries can be toxic, yes, but they can also be motivating. In English, we say, iron sharpens iron. It means strong people can make each other stronger through competition. You do not have to hate someone to be challenged by them. You can respect the competition and use it to improve yourself. There are also iconic performances that feel like stamps on his legacy. People remember Champions League nights at the Santiago Bernabeu, the way he could change a tie with one run, one jump, one finish. People remember that he became Real Madrid's all-time leading scorer, a statistic that tells you not just about skill, but about consistency over many seasons. And even if you are not a football fan, you can understand what it means to be the top scorer in the history of a club like Real Madrid. That club has decades of legendary players. To be the top of that list is a kind of immortality in sports. It is the difference between being famous for a moment and being remembered for generations. I also want to talk about his public image because in English you will hear people describe him in very different ways. Some people admire him deeply. Some people criticize him. That is normal for a global celebrity. When someone is that visible, people project their own feelings onto them. And here is a useful phrase. We say he is a polarizing figure. Polarizing means people have strong opinions in opposite directions. But even if you do not agree with everything about him, it is hard to deny the scale of his achievements. Multiple Champions League titles in different countries, major individual awards, and a historic international scoring record. Those are measurable facts, not opinions. If you are listening and trying to improve your English, I want you to practice something simple while staying inside the story. When you hear a big moment, try to describe it out loud in one calm sentence, like you are telling a friend. For example, you could say, in 2009, he moved to Real Madrid for a record fee. Or, in 2016, Portugal won the Euros in France. Or, in 2008, he won the Champions League with Manchester United. These sentences are short, clear, and powerful. And when you can say clear sentences, you feel more confident. Confidence grows from clarity. As we get closer to the present, Ronaldo's story becomes a story about time. Most athletes do not stay at the top for long. Football is physically demanding, and the world always waits for the next young star. But his career shows a rare kind of longevity. Longevity means lasting a long time while staying effective. You do not get longevity by accident. You earn it with choices you repeat every day. Sleep, training, recovery, focus, motivation, and the ability to handle criticism without falling apart. And that last part is important. Criticism is unavoidable when you are visible. In English, we sometimes say, you cannot please everyone. It means no matter what you do, some people will still complain. The healthiest response is to stay grounded in your goals. And I think that is a beautiful lesson for speaking English. When you speak, some people might correct you. Some people might not understand you right away. Some people might be impatient, but you cannot let other people control your growth. You stay focused on your purpose. You learn, you improve, you keep your heart soft and your mind strong. That balance is everything. One more thing I love about Ronaldo's story is that it reminds me how success is built in chapters. Madeira, then Lisbon, then Manchester, then Madrid, then Turin, then back to Manchester, then Saudi Arabia. Different languages around him, different teammates, different coaches, different styles of football, different expectations. A lot of people think confidence means you always feel comfortable. But real confidence is portable. It travels with you. It is the ability to adapt. And adapt is such a useful everyday word. Adapt means you change your habits to fit a new situation. If you can adapt, you can survive and even thrive in a new country, a new job, or a new language. When I look back at that night in Moscow in 2008, the missed penalty and the tears, I do not see weakness. I see exposure. I see vulnerability. I see someone learning in public. And then I look at the records, the trophies, the goals, the awards, the iconic finals, the stadiums, the seasons, and I see what happens when you refuse to let one moment define you. In English, we say he bounced back. Bounced back means he recovered after something difficult and returned strong. And that is what I want for you with English. Maybe you had an embarrassing moment speaking. Maybe you froze. Maybe you forgot a word. Maybe someone laughed. That moment is not your identity. Your identity is your effort, your courage, and your ability to bounce back. So, as you finish listening today, I want you to carry a simple feeling with you. A calm kind of motivation. Not pressure, not perfection, just forward movement. Ronaldo's story is full of huge numbers and global stages, but the heart of it is simple. A kid from Funchal, born in 1985, leaving home, training, learning, failing, winning, changing clubs, carrying a country, and still showing up. If he can keep showing up in front of the whole world, you can keep showing up for your English, one day at a time, one conversation at a time, one small brave sentence at a time. And if you want, tell me what your next small brave sentence will be, because I would genuinely love to hear it, and I will be right here with you for the next story.